The arrival of humanity. The vast expanse of space stretched out before Ambassador Gray as his diplomatic vessel sliced through the darkness. The ship gleamed under the light of distant stars, its sleek body cutting through the void like a silver knife. Inside, the atmosphere was serene. As always, Ambassador Gray stood tall and composed on the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back, gazing at the approaching blue and green world on the display before him. Earth, the planet, was a speck compared to the civilizations that had already existed for millennia in the galactic order. Yet, for reasons unknown to Gray, this primitive world was now making its entrance into the Galactic Council. How quaint, he muttered under his breath, observing the tiny speck of Earth that was growing larger by the second. Despite their impressive achievement of faster-than-light travel just a year ago, the humans had already demanded a council meeting. What audacity! Gray couldn't help but feel a sense of incredulity. Humans had been a mystery to the galaxy for years, a species that defied expectations, choosing to survive in their primitive system and conquer obstacles no one had expected them to overcome. Colonizing 3 solar systems without even mastering FTL travel. How had they done it? His assistant, Reed, a short, energetic being with bright green skin and sharp eyes, looked up from his datapad, frowning. Ambassador, their development pattern doesn't match any known species. They colonized 3 systems without faster-than-light technology. Reed reported, his voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. Gray's eyebrow arched in surprise. Without FTL, that's impossible. His voice faltered for just a second before he regained his usual composure. He wasn't sure if he felt more baffled or intrigued. The humans used what they called generation ships, enormous vessels that slowly carried humanity's ancestors across the stars for hundreds of years to reach their new homes. The idea was fascinating, yet, on a grander scale, absurd. Why go through such effort when other civilizations had already discovered the secrets of space travel centuries ago? Reed continued to scroll through the data. The ships took hundreds of years to reach their destinations. Ambassador, the humans were able to terraform planets using rudimentary methods, without advanced technology. It's perplexing. Gray stared at the data for a moment, feeling a rare confusion wash over him. This wasn't the way the galaxy worked. The law of the stars dictated that civilizations rose through technology, through mastery of the cosmos, not through sheer will and stubbornness. Yet the humans were defying every known rule of the galactic order. Fascinating, Gray said slowly, his voice reflecting more confusion than admiration. Such persistence for such little gain. The AI system aboard the diplomatic ship pinged an alert, announcing their approach to Earth's space station. Ambassador Gray straightened his posture, adjusting his formal robes as they neared the human homeworld. This was no ordinary diplomatic mission. It was the first step into an unknown chapter for the Galactic Council. Humanity had somehow made it to this point, and Gray had the responsibility of overseeing their evaluation as potential members. As the highest-ranking diplomat in the core worlds, he had overseen first contact with 57 different species. Each time, the new species had been eager to please, overwhelmed by the grandeur of the Galactic Council, and easily accepted their place in the hierarchy. The humans, however, presented an entirely different challenge. He had no idea what to expect from them. As the docking procedure unfolded smoothly, Gray and his delegation disembarked into the human facility. He expected to enter a crude, utilitarian space station, something reminiscent of early galactic outposts. But what he found left him speechless. The structure was gleaming, filled with sophisticated technology that rivaled even the best of the Galactic Council's facilities. It was clean, well-organized, and, disturbingly, somehow, elegant. Then, as they moved deeper into the facility, they came face to face with the human representatives. Admiral Steele, a tall, calm man with gray hair and eyes full of experience, waited for them. His crisp white uniform, adorned with simple yet elegant insignia, stood in stark contrast to the complex, ornate ceremonial garb of Gray and his delegation. The humans' demeanor was disarming. There was no awe, no hesitation in their bearing as they greeted the ambassador and his team. It was as if they had been prepared for this meeting for years, rather than being caught off guard by the Galactic Council's sudden interest in them. Gray found himself taken aback, unsure of how to process this encounter. "Welcome to Earth Station 1," Admiral Steele said, his voice steady and confident. "I trust your journey was pleasant." Gray, for the first time in his career, was unsure how to respond. New species typically babbled with excitement or fear during first contact, but the humans simply stood there, composed, as if meeting old friends. Their calmness was unsettling. Gray checked his translator device, ensuring it was functioning correctly. No translation errors had been made, but still, something about this encounter felt wrong. "The journey was adequate," Gray replied, carefully choosing his words in his formal diplomatic tone. His answer was more out of habit than necessity. It was part of the standard response to formal introductions. "Of course," Steele said smoothly. "Though I should mention that we are here to evaluate the Council as well. Membership, after all, is a two-way street." He said the words casually, as though the thought of rejecting the Council's membership offer was something perfectly reasonable. Gray nearly stumbled, his assistant Reed's tablet nearly falling from his hands. In all of Galactic Council history, no species had ever suggested rejecting membership. The very idea was absurd, humbling to the point of being laughable. "Perhaps," Gray said carefully, trying to regain his composure, "you do not fully understand the honor being offered. The Council represents over 300 species, each with its own advanced technology and knowledge. This is not something to take lightly." Steele smiled, though his eyes remained cold. "As is our own achievement in reaching the stars," he replied, his tone tinged with something that felt almost like amusement. "But shall we begin the cultural exchange?" A shift of unease rippled through Gray's mind. The humans weren't intimidated by the Galactic Order. They weren't even interested in being impressed by the Council's superiority. They were acting as if they were the equals of every species in the room, despite their relatively primitive history. With a slight shake of his head, Gray walked into the conference room, his mind racing. He had been a diplomat for centuries, but humanity had just shattered every expectation he had ever held. After all, he thought, they weren't the first species he had seen enter the Galactic Council. But this felt different. It felt as though Earth was already thinking beyond their place in the galaxy. Something told him that the humans weren't just here to join. They were here to change the very fabric of the galactic system. And Gray was about to find out just how much humanity was capable of. The spark of challenge. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Gray's first encounter with the humans on Earth Station 1. The evaluation process had gone smoother than expected, but despite all the data his team had collected, Gray still found himself troubled by something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Humanity's behavior was baffling. But more than that, it was unsettling. It was as if they were intentionally avoiding the usual path of submission that new species usually followed. Instead of looking up to the Council, they seemed to view it as an opportunity, a stepping stone, a challenge. The chamber where Gray sat was bathed in the soft blue glow of the data screens that filled the walls. His fingers danced across the console, inputting data from their observations. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the ship's AI, and the occasional shift of his assistant, Reed, as he busied himself with more reports. "Ambassador," Reed's voice broke the silence. "I just finished analyzing their latest technological breakthroughs. The information they've shared is extraordinary." Gray didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned closer to the holographic screen, studying the images of Earth's technology, especially their terraforming projects on Mars and Venus. The process, which would have taken millennia for any other species, was being completed in mere decades by humans. But that was just the surface. The humans' ability to manipulate environments, to turn hostile worlds into thriving habitats, spoke volumes about their ingenuity. It was an accomplishment that had eluded the galaxy for centuries. Their advancements in terraforming are beyond anything we've seen before, Reed continued, his voice filled with awe. But what's truly fascinating is how they approach each problem. They don't take impossible as a valid answer. They treat it as an invitation. Gray looked up sharply. An invitation? Yes, Reed said, turning the tablet toward him. Take their history, for example. They were told they couldn't fly, so they built machines to soar through the skies. Told they couldn't travel to the stars. They strapped themselves to rockets. Told they couldn't survive in space. They created stations and colonies. Gray stared at the screen, the weight of the realization settling in. The humans didn't just overcome obstacles, they actively sought them out. It was as if they had adopted an entirely different philosophy from any other species in the galaxy. While others feared the unknown or tried to avoid the impossible, humanity seemed to thrive on it. They didn't just want to survive. They wanted to conquer the very limits of existence. Gray stood up, pacing slowly across the room. His mind raced through the implications of their actions. Every other species that had made it to the Galactic Council had done so with the primary goal of survival, of finding stability in a galaxy full of chaos. They had been content with advancement at a steady pace, with taking calculated risks and adhering to the laws of probability. But the humans, they didn't seem to care for the status quo. They didn't believe in settling for good enough. For them, it was all about testing the boundaries, about proving that anything was possible, even if it seemed impossible to others. Show me their military history, Gray ordered, trying to find some explanation for their relentless drive. Perhaps their history would reveal some deeper flaw in their psyche, some vulnerability that could explain their curious behavior. The screen flickered as Reed pulled up records, and Gray saw images that stopped him in his tracks. Wars that had ravaged entire continents. Images of brutal battles fought in deserts, frozen wastelands, and dense jungles. Yet, despite the horrors of these wars, something stood out in the records. It wasn't just the violence that caught Gray's attention, it was the survivors. They fought for survival in conditions we thought unimaginable, Reed said quietly. They endured injuries that would have killed other species, and they fought on, no matter the odds. Gray's fingers hovered over the data, reading through the reports of battles that spanned decades. Wars fought in the name of pride, independence, and sometimes even in defense of their very existence. Yet, after each devastating war, the humans rebuilt. They didn't just survive, they learned. They adapted. They made peace with their enemies, and they grew stronger as a result. It was a pattern that had persisted throughout their history, and it was unlike anything Gray had encountered before. These humans, Gray muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. They don't know the meaning of defeat. They rebuild, adapt, and move forward. Reed, who had been following Gray's thoughts, nodded. It's like they've learned to thrive on the very things that would break other species. Their ability to persevere, to transform their weaknesses into strengths, is unprecedented. Gray turned away from the screen, looking out the small viewport that showed Earth's distant, swirling oceans and continents. For the first time in years, he felt uncertainty stir within him. These humans were not what he had expected. They were not helpless, overwhelmed by the enormity of the galactic order. They were curious, driven. They had shown Gray that they weren't interested in fitting into the galaxy's established order. They wanted to change it. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of Admiral Steele on the comm screen. His calm face filled the viewport, and Gray had to remind himself not to let his surprise show. The humans had a way of catching him off guard at every turn. Ambassador, Steele's voice rang through the chamber, calm and controlled as always. We've prepared a demonstration of our terraforming technology on Venus. Would you like to observe? Gray stood motionless for a moment, his mind racing. The humans had already displayed incredible technological feats, but to accomplish something so monumental in such a short time, terraforming a planet like Venus, which had been deemed impossible for centuries, was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Steele's voice broke into his thoughts. We believe that no challenge is too great. When others tell us something is impossible, we take that as a suggestion to prove them wrong. Gray felt a chill run down his spine. That word again, impossible. It was the single word that had shaped humanity's existence, their philosophy, and their worldview. It was the word that made the galaxy fear them. Impossible. Gray repeated softly, as if testing the weight of the word. And what if the challenge you face is the entire galaxy, Admiral? Steele's smile widened slightly, though it was subtle. Then we'll meet it head-on, Ambassador. As we always have. Gray's heart skipped a beat. The more he learned about humanity, the more he realized that they weren't just a new species entering the fold of the Galactic Council. They were a force that could challenge the very foundation of the galaxy. Their hunger for progress, their relentless pursuit of what others deemed impossible, had the potential to shift the balance of power. As the communication ended and the images of the Venus terraforming project flooded the screen, Gray's thoughts became clearer. The humans had shown the galaxy that they would not simply accept their place among the stars. They had come here to change the very rules of the game. And in that moment, Gray understood. Humanity had brought with them something more powerful than advanced technology or military might. They had brought a word that could shatter the galaxy's complacency and strike fear into the hearts of those who had long ruled the stars. That word was impossible. And humanity was about to show the galaxy that they had no intention of letting that word stop them. The catalyst of change. The days blurred together as the evaluations of the human species continued. Ambassador Gray had found himself grappling with a growing sense of unease. Everything he had been taught about first contact, about how species typically interacted with the Galactic Council, had been turned upside down by humanity. It was as though they had learned to defy the very principles of diplomacy, opting instead for something more direct and unyielding. Though Gray was no stranger to surprises, nothing could have prepared him for the sheer unpredictability of humanity. The reports from the evaluation team were coming in thick and fast, each one more perplexing than the last. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had, against all expectations, made a statement that would echo through the entire galaxy. In the wake of their terraforming breakthrough on Venus, Earth had proposed a radical idea. The humans were not interested in simply joining the Galactic Council. They were looking to reshape it. They had requested the creation of a new council body, one that would empower emerging civilizations, like Earth, and offer a different kind of leadership that didn't center solely around the dominant powers of the galaxy. When Gray had first received the transmission, he had dismissed it as a miscommunication. Surely, no one would dare propose such an audacious challenge to the established order. But as he read through the data and listened to the humans' reasoning, something gnawed at him. The humans weren't simply seeking membership, they were issuing a challenge to the status quo. A challenge that, in the eyes of many, could not be ignored. Ambassador, Reed's voice broke into Gray's thoughts. We've received an urgent message from the Proxima Trade Alliance. They're ready to meet with us. Immediately. It seems the humans' request has caused quite a stir. Gray turned sharply to face Reed, his mind racing. Proxima, one of the most influential trade hubs in the galaxy, had long been a key ally of the Galactic Council. If they were willing to entertain a meeting about humanity's proposal, it meant the message was far more significant than Gray had originally thought. The Proxima Alliance was cautious, pragmatic, and deeply rooted in the existing power structures. For them to consider anything that challenged the Council's current order suggested a shift in the winds of galactic politics. Prepare the ship. We leave immediately, Gray ordered. He needed to understand exactly what had spurred this sudden wave of interest in humanity's radical idea. Whatever the outcome, Gray knew that it would determine not only humanity's future, but the future of the entire galaxy. As Gray entered the Proxima delegation's private chamber aboard their space station, he could feel the weight of the moment. The room was dark, the only light emanating from a series of glowing orbs suspended in the air, casting an eerie, almost foreboding glow over the gathering. The Proxima representatives were already seated, their forms blurred by the shadows, their expressions unreadable. At the center of the room, the Proxima ambassador, a tall being with silvery blue skin, rose to greet Gray. "Ambassador Gray," the Proxima ambassador said in a voice that echoed with authority. "We've been following humanity's progress with great interest. Your proposal for a new council body has stirred more than a few discussions." The ambassador's tone was measured but tinged with curiosity. "But what we need to understand is this. Why should we, as established members of the Galactic Council, even entertain such an idea? What do the humans offer that we don't already have?" Gray took a deep breath, his mind weighing how to approach this delicate matter. He knew that the Proxima Alliance had always been aligned with the larger, more established powers. Their loyalty to the current system was unshakable. Any hint that they might sway from that path could potentially disrupt the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. Yet, the humans were different. They had already demonstrated their ability to overcome immense challenges and make the impossible a reality. It was time for Gray to play his hand. "What humanity offers," Gray began slowly, choosing each word carefully, "is a willingness to face the impossible, to challenge it head-on. For centuries, your alliance has operated within the same framework, the framework of established power, of dominance and control. But humanity has learned to thrive on the very things that others consider insurmountable." He paused, letting his words sink in. The Proxima ambassador raised an eyebrow, but Gray continued. "The humans have built colonies on Mars and Venus, planets once deemed uninhabitable. They've developed technologies that defy the very laws we once held sacred. They are not afraid of the impossible. They thrive on it. If we are to move forward as a galaxy, we must recognize that the old ways of thinking will no longer suffice. Humanity's request isn't just about membership in the Council. It's about breaking free from the stagnation that has plagued us for millennia." The room grew silent. The Proxima representatives exchanged looks, their eyes narrowing as they processed Gray's words. Then the ambassador spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. "You speak of breaking free from stagnation, Ambassador, but what of the risks? What if this idea destabilizes the delicate order we've established? What if humanity's ambition, unchecked, leads to chaos?" Gray felt a flicker of frustration. He had expected this. The Proxima Alliance was built on cautious pragmatism, and the idea of radical change was always met with resistance. But Gray also knew that the galaxy had become complacent. The same old powers continued to dominate, keeping new species at bay and stifling progress. Humanity's willingness to risk everything in the pursuit of the impossible was exactly what the galaxy needed. It was the spark of change. "Ambassador," Gray replied, his voice steady, "what you call chaos, humanity calls opportunity. If we continue to follow the same path, we will remain stagnant, trapped in the same old power structures. But if we embrace the unknown, if we welcome the challenge, we can build something greater than anything we've ever known. The galaxy's future lies not in maintaining the status quo, but in breaking free from it. Humanity may not have centuries of history or advanced technology, but what they have is a spirit that cannot be ignored." The room was still for a long moment. Gray could feel the weight of the decision in the air. The Proxima representatives were no strangers to risk, but this was different. This wasn't just a new trade agreement or military alliance. It was a call to reimagine the very way the galaxy worked. Finally, the Proxima ambassador spoke, his voice slow but measured. "We will consider your proposal, Ambassador. But know this, if humanity's ambition leads to instability, it will not be tolerated. We are watching you." Gray nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You will not regret it," he said, his confidence unwavering. As Gray exited the Proxima station, he felt a sense of accomplishment. The seeds of change had been planted. The humans had awakened something in the galaxy, a hunger for progress, a desire to break free from the limitations that had bound them for centuries. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Gray knew one thing for certain. Humanity had already begun to reshape the future of the galaxy. And there was no turning back. Back aboard the diplomatic vessel, Gray gazed out at the stars, his thoughts swirling. The Proxima Alliance had not yet agreed to humanity's proposal, but the seeds had been planted, and for the first time in his long career, Gray felt the excitement of a true turning point in history. The impossible was no longer out of reach. Humanity had come to challenge the galaxy's complacency, and that, in itself, was a force that could change everything.